as a white person, it would be impossible for me to experience racism in this country because white people are the group that historically and still currently have the power in this country.
Yeah. For the largest part of my childhood, I didn't. I won't lie. Or let me say I was more oblivious to it, you know, because I grew up. I went to a primary school that was just multiracial. I went to Mondial Primary. It was very multiracial, so I didn't see this white demon that everybody described, or this Indian man that doesn't like black people that everybody describes. I didn't even see it. I saw, man, Brendan's my friend, and Shahid, he's Indian and he's hella cool, you know. So I was literally on that the moment my dad, because you know you have to inform kids of such at a young age. When my dad tried to tell me about it, I was just like, nah, maybe the ones not all of I was not all of them, not all of them, the ones you grew up with, you know. And even into like my preteen ages where my best friend was literally a white guy who lives back opposite from my house. I had white friends. I was that, as a matter of fact, because of the way I speak, because of the way I speak, a lot of the other black kids didn't really vibe with me well because I come from Pretoria. So if I were to speak Spitori, they didn't really understand me. So obviously the mutual language was English. And when I spoke English, I sounded like this. So they didn't even want to be a part of that. So I found myself befriending a lot of white people. And so I didn't really experience racism because the people that actually accept me for who I am are these white people until I actually freaking experienced it. Until I experienced it for the first time. It was like a student exchange program with the high school that I was attending, in the high school that I was attending. And we went to Turkey for, I think, about 3 months, right? So we went there to learn the language and just, I don't know what the purpose of that was. We were just going to another country. We just wanted to go to another country. So it's a connection flight. So from here to, it's from here to Dubai. So on the plane to Dubai, I was sitting next to a white gentleman, and gentleman, wow. I was sitting next to a white man, and immediately, you can just see that someone is not accepting of your presence. You can sit next to someone and immediately go, you know, that was the first thing. But then again, I'm like, it's all in my head. Whatever. I was just a weird teenager, so I already assumed that not everybody likes me, so it's whatever. And then as we continue with the flight, he first of all tells me that the movie I'm watching is loud. We have earphones, by the way. He's like, you're watching a loud movie. And I'm like, okay. So he took off his earphones to hear the and stuff happening and all the sound effects happening in the movie. He's like, hey, turn down the volume. The movie you're watching is loud, or change your movie. Again, I'm a kid, right? So I'm like, oh, sorry, just turn down the volume. And in the Emirates, they have this thing where you have a phone, you have a screen in front of you, and you have a phone attached to the screen, right? So you can actually call another seat. And since it was a school trip, a lot of my friends were there, right? And some of my friends are sitting there, some of my friends are sitting there. So we were like memorizing each other's seat numbers. So I'd call my friends like during the flight, because it's a long flight. So you want to talk to someone because sometimes you're just stuck in between two random people. And that was my situation. So as I'm speaking to one of my friends, he takes off his earphones and he's like, do you mind? I'm watching a movie, you know? And bear in mind, this time is like when the cabin lights are off. So my voice is already like this and I'm speaking. And he's like, do you mind? Do you mind? I'm watching a movie. I'm like, oh, lower my voice. He's like, no, don't speak at all. I'm like, this is going to be a great flight. That's what this is going to be. And then I think the last two straws were over the foot compartment and the armrest. So you have that space underneath the seat in front of you to put your legs. So he spread his legs to a point where one foot is under his space and his right foot is under my space, right? And now I'm sitting cross-legged, and every time I try to maybe stretch my legs or relax my legs, because I'm not going to sit in a something teen hour flight like this the whole time. So every time I try to stretch my legs, he'd like kick me. and like, you know, and sometimes and there were times where I'd be like taking a nap during the flight, and I'd be, you know, obviously just relaxing my body. Then I'd be woken up by like him kicking me and be like, do you mind not stepping on me? Again, very big, burly white man. I am this skinny little short kid. It's before puberty even had a chance to consider me. So when that happens, I'm like, all right, cool. Let me stay awake. Let me just get through this flight. And I put my arm on the armrest. So it's a shared armrest, but it's divided, right? As much as it's a wide armrest, there's a line there. Like kind of like these movie seat armrests. Some of them are just two joined into one. So he literally occupied the space of two. So there was this little corner left. And every time my elbow would touch his, he'd like just like jerk my elbow off of the armrest and be like, do you have a problem with me? Do you have a problem? Right. And yeah, at that moment, I called the flight. Actually, I didn't call the flight attendant. When they were passing food around, she just like looked at me. She's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Nah." And then she's like, "Go to the bathroom." So as I'm going to the bathroom, like she meets me like as I'm about to enter. She's like, "What's happening? What's wrong?" I'm like, "Hey, bro, I don't know how to describe it, but that guy's a bully, you know." So I tell her all the stuff that she's doing, and she's like, "Okay, well, when stuff like this usually happens, we usually maybe bump you up a class, right? But because business and first class are fully booked, we can maybe move you to another seat." And in my mind, I'm like, you're gonna move me next to another guy who most probably is gonna have another problem with me or whatever. I'm like, you know what, let me just get past this flight. And when I stepped out of, eventually when we landed, I'm talking to the friend that I was calling the whole flight, and I'm telling him the story. And I'm like, yeah, this guy, he just had a problem. Like I think he just doesn't like kids. You know, he was just uncomfortable with a kid sitting next to him. You know how adults are. And then he's like, nah, bro, he doesn't like you because you're black, dog. For the fact that you didn't do or say anything to him, he doesn't like you because you're black. And immediately, I think ever since that moment, I'd reflect on past moments. I'm like, oh shit, that was racist. Oh shit, that was racist. Sometimes even with the friends that I kept, I'd reflect on moments that I've had with them. I'm like, did they know that that was racist? Because that was hella racist. You know, it's stories of like um I don't know, like the simplest things, like if we're at a party, if we're at a birthday party as kids, and I start reflecting on the fact that, wait a minute, there were two lines at that party when we were receiving party packs, and we were literally racially divided. What is this? Like, what is this? Do you understand? They'd put us into groups in class, and you kind of look at the groups that they're putting us in, and you're like, okay, Stephen and Natasha and Jonathan and Jason are in one group. What's going on? And that time it's kids, so you'll find it's not like they're friends. Most probably Stephen is my friend, and Natasha's friends with Bushle and whatever. But the teacher's just like, all right, I'm gonna put you into groups, and you're gonna do a project, and then you just see that you find certain jokes that teachers would make that I'm like, yeah, that is racist. You find um the efforts that teachers take to pronounce certain names, Greek names and Italian names and versus black names. It's just like, nah, we're not about to twist our tongue for you, boy. Your name isn't Shlam Shlam. That's what your name is, you know? So, and since I'm saying at the time, I didn't realize it, but when I reflect back on certain things, because of literally one incident, ever since that day, I started reflecting back on certain things. I'm like, I don't know if these people even knew it, but that was kind of discriminatory of them. That was very wow. You know, there's certain I'm not sure if I said it the last time, like for the fact that it's just the pronunciation of sounds sometimes, that if it's associated with a black name, they want no part of it. They don't want like the name Ntlantla. It's just like, nah, that sound, they can't make it. And then ask them to say clap, and they do. You know, they can't say ngube, but they can say no. You know, it's just the logic behind it. You can see that immediately it's a black name. Nope, I'm not about it. Mm-mm. But you can do it. Nah, I can't. I can't. Your name is Nkube. Okay, Bololo, Bololo. We don't know what happened to the N in Bonolo. They just replaced it with the L. Why? For what good reason? No, but your name is Bololo from now on.
It would be really naive of me to say I've never seen it. I've seen it in so many different places on social media. I've seen how Black people have been treated. Racism has been all over social media in comment sections of people saying, "Oh, you're a Black man. Why would you know any different?" Or would be in videos as in jokes, or I've seen it in real life too. I'll be at the shops, or I will be at the post office or at the bank, and somebody, because of their skin color and because of how they look, will be challenged differently as if they were a different color. And you see it in everyday life. It's hard to not see it. I think people who say that they've never witnessed racism or it doesn't exist is very naive, because you can see it in jobs, you can see it in job descriptions, you can see it in languages and universities, you can see it everywhere. And I think it's just up to people to, open their eyes and be aware that it's everywhere. And I've seen it everywhere. I mean, I could not even be able to count on my fingers how many encounters I've witnessed or seen. And, off the top of my head, high school was one of them, university has been one of them. Especially when I was enrolling into university, people will often say like, "Oh, you won't get into medicine because you're white and all the Black people are going to get in because of their skin color." That's racism. And, a lot of the times it may go over my head, but when I open my eyes and I acknowledge it, it's almost every day, driving, and people will be like, "Oh, it's a Black beggar," or, "Oh, it's everywhere." You can't ignore that.
Okay, it's been a while since I've been in school, but I'll try and remember something. Okay, so I remember when I was younger, I think I was in grade 1. Um, I was, I always used to do braids, right? So I would always like do braids, then on the weekend take them out, put them in again. Like that was the cycle that I had when I was younger and I was in school. And one weekend I took out my braids, but then I didn't have time to go to the hair salon and put in new braids. So I just chilled with my natural hair. And it was big, like, because I had been just braiding it back to back to back for like the past 2 years. So I hadn't even seen my hair, what it looked like. And it was natural. It was like an afro. And I went to school with it. And I was told that I actually got in trouble. And I was told that I had to relax my hair or do something to it to make it look more presentable. So yeah, that one has stuck with me for quite some time actually.
At first, I didn't think of it as racist. It just really came across to me like I was like, I don't really care. It didn't phase me as much. And then one day, we sat in the car, and then he called me half and half. And I was like, why do you do that? And I actually asked him, and then he said, well, because you're not white and because you're not Black, so you're something in between. And then I said, but you don't know that. Like, do you know my lineage? Like, you don't know that. And he was like, well, look at you. And then he called me he called me a hotner. And I was like, oh, okay. So I'll be telling your child what you told me, and you and I will not be conversing anymore. I think also he didn't understand that it was racist because he seemed very nonchalant about it. I don't think he understood the evilness rooted within that word, and with what he was saying. I'm not defending him at all, because I checked him. I was like, look here, like, this is inappropriate. I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel comfortable with you calling me that, and I don't feel comfortable talking to you about this, because you're a white man. So calm down. I think he's changed tremendously. I think he's definitely changed, but that was definitely a moment of racism where it was blatant and in my face, and I was like, wow. So this is what we're not going to do.
I had a little dog, a Yorkshire Terrier, growing up. Her name was Cleo. So she was a little rambunctious little dog. I grew up in a suburb in Pretoria, Garsfontein.
So yeah, she used to like, you know, those dogs run out on the gate, out of the gate, all of that stuff, always chasing a little dog, all that stuff. Cool, fine. It was one of those days. She ran out of the gates, like running into the street. I'm chasing after her, all of that. We were one of two Black families on that street. Cool. So some man, some white man who I don't know, I guess happened to be walking on the streets, you know, picks up my dog. And obviously, and I was like 16 at this point, you know, like I'm running, I have my hands out. Thank you for fun, you know, getting my dog. He completely ignores me, turns to a white woman who happened to be walking up the street and is like, here's your dog. And that woman is like, no, it's not my dog. And I was like, yes, she's my dog. So again, the idea that like a Black person cannot have a Yorkshire Terrier, you know, like that's not how it works. I know I've been mistaken for a housekeeper, not even just like because I'm a housekeeper. It's, how do I put this? It's because I'm Black. I had a car at this point in Cape Town, and this, how do I explain this? My roommate at the time said that some woman had come to her and was just like, I never see anyone in the house. I just see the housekeeper going to the garage. My car was in the garage. I would only be going in and out of my car. So, yeah, you know?
One experience that I had that was very traumatic was in my neighborhood. I was working with my grandmother. We were trying to go to the local supermarket, and a man with his children in the car threatened to run us over with their car and called us the K word as we were walking. Another incident was when I was in high school and I was walking home, and some white dude who was driving past in a truck just decided to pop out his head and start speaking monkey to me, you know, say as I'm like a monkey to me. I've had so many, even microaggressions, you know, when I was taught by primarily white teachers, and they would say things like apartheid was better, or things were better during apartheid, you know what I mean? Like they would see like that the streets are dirty in town, and be like, things were a lot better for everyone in apartheid, which was not the case. You know, as a Black person, you were not allowed to roam the streets in apartheid. You were not allowed to. You were not free. The service which you received was limited. You know, so even it makes you feel like when you were in the class and your white teachers tell you like, you know, I wish we were back in apartheid, things were better back then. It makes you feel as if like, hold on, are you the problem? You know what I mean? Are you the person that they don't wanna see in your class? Or yeah, I've had a lot of experiences with racism. Let me think back. Yeah, it's very traumatic. Even on social media, for example, even on social media when I post, there's always someone who will call me the K word, or will call me a monkey, or will tell me to go back to the zoo, or will tell me to go back to the zoo, or will tell me to go back to the jungle where I belong, or call me a bushman. You know what I mean? So I've experienced a lot of racism in my lifetime.